Welcome to the Encouragement and Engineering Podcast. We help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Jason Skeesick. Jason is a U.S. Army veteran, coach, and entrepreneurial evangelist. He is a father, husband, fighter, and carrier of heavy things. I love that. His company, Spear and Clover, helps businesses with good leaders, talented teams, and strong playbooks go from contenders to championship teams. You can find Jason hosting the weekly Spear and Clover podcast, available on YouTube and across all audio platforms. So please welcome to the show, Jason Skeesick. Jason, thank you for taking the time today. And again, I want to thank you again for your service since today's Veterans Day, and you served our country in the U.S. Army. So thank you so much.
Bob, thank you so much, man. I think you and the country are worth it. So it's my pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, if you can, why don't we tell the listeners to get to know you, a little bit about you and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bob. So as you mentioned, I'm a veteran of the United States Army. I served from 2004 to 2008. And that was probably, I have two core values that make up, what you see on the Spear and Clover symbol. One is military mindset, and the other one is spirit of the puppy. And we can kind of go into that a little bit more later, but I was born with spirit of the puppy. And so like many entrepreneurs, I was born with entrepreneur's disease, which they used to call ADHD.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're calling it these days, but I just like to call it entrepreneur's disease. And so I was a handful. I was always high energy. I loved trying new things. I loved doing new things. My attention span was kind of all over the place. But it wasn't until I joined the military where I understood and gained over some hard fought times the value of discipline and respect and honor and duty and loyalty. And those are the things that make up that spear portion of the Spear and Clover. So coming back from the military, I did two things, Bob. I went back to school for finance and ultimately went into a banking role for the biggest bank in the world. And at the same time, I started a small CrossFit gym in a dusty warehouse on the fourth floor for just myself and two veteran friends. And I started it in a small group. And eventually, I realized as I was working on a $50 million deal somewhere, and my boss's boss and I were all at the table, and the entrepreneur was sitting on the other side, I just realized that really I was on the wrong side of the table. I could only see eye to eye with the entrepreneur. And so once I committed full time to entrepreneurship, the rest was history, as they say. And
Right.
then maybe that's a good place to break. There's certainly more to it, but I feel like that's enough for now.
Well, and it's interesting because you brought about a business. It's a CrossFit business, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I've owned the CrossFit gym for about 12 years. I'm now a minority owner. When I moved away in 2020 to a different state, and had already been coaching other entrepreneurs as a full-time gig.
Gotcha.
So I needed to make sure that tribe and that community was going to be, led forward with somebody who was totally focused on it. It deserves that. And so sold the company to my brother from another mother, Andrew Westcott.
Okay. Well, and because you did that, it's interesting because the idea of your business now is helping building people to build their business. And it's like you teach them to work smarter, not necessarily harder, but you have a proven framework. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's important. And it leads into what you said about your going into the military and you got some focused discipline. Is that what you help people to do with their businesses? Because I can see an entrepreneur, like you said, it's a puppy thing. Okay, let's do this shiny thing over here. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, well, the entrepreneur is, we're very similar. I've been blessed to have worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs in one way or another. I've been a part of multiple different masterminds. I've been a coach for entrepreneurs for a few hundred of them. And I actually have taken a small sabbatical from anything. I took a mini retirement over the last year, and I call that a year of service. And what I did every single day, 5 days a week at least, during that was, number one, I spent time with my wife and my brand new daughter, Lucy. Shout out to Lucy. Number two, I did jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai almost every single day. And number three, I was on the phone with entrepreneurs. And so I get to see what I would be like if I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and what I might be like if I grew up in Maine, and what I might be like if I came from Arizona or Australia. And one of the things that we all have in common is, at least the ones I enjoy working with, the entrepreneurs I enjoy working with, have a big, hairy mission that they can see how it can make an impact in the world. I always say entrepreneurs are those folks who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. The problem is in order to get from point zero to point one and start a great business, you have to work your ass off. You have to wear all the different hats. You have to be able to be kind of everything for everybody. And that just can crush you as you try to go from step one to step two and beyond.
Right.
And so, what I do is I help entrepreneurs, as a mentor has helped me in the past, to take a break, pump the brakes, and really build frameworks, foundations, and even flow into their business. And I don't do that by telling them what to do. I do that by asking them a series of questions that bring out exactly what that business should be when they're given an opportunity to really think it through.
And that's interesting because, so many times people think, okay, you're an entrepreneur, you're running a business, you're running so fast all the time, but you're saying, hold on, stop, slow down, let's build a solid foundation. That's critical in today's society.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to break in there, I'll give you one example that every entrepreneur can identify with if you've been in business for a little while. And that is if you wanted to go out and hire somebody. You can go out and hire somebody and just get the first person that's qualified, the first person that gives you a good interview, the first person that maybe has the experience that you're looking for. And it can be 3, 6, 12 months before you realize that they're a terrible fit and that ultimately you've been paying them to actually cost you more money.
Right.
Whereas if you take the time to understand your real mission, what you actually are trying to do with the world, you take the time to understand your core values as an operator, as a business owner, as a business, and then have a real strong understanding of exactly what your goals are as an organization, and then you apply those things as a lens when you go to find an employee, it'll take you a little bit longer to get them, but immediately you'll notice the difference because your words and your actions will be coming out of their mouth and their hands. And that's just anybody listening to this that's struggled with that right now is like, yeah, right, whatever. But they definitely identify with the cost of bringing somebody on board who's not bought on in the mission, who doesn't have a core value match, and maybe doesn't even get energy from the job that they're doing. They're just there to collect a paycheck.
And that does make a big difference. I mean, taking that time up front to get that right person saves you so much in the long run. It's definitely a plus doing that. It just builds, like you said, that you're trying to duplicate yourself, and that's critical. So you want that same values, you want those same work ethics, the whole bit. And when you can find that by taking that time and getting that valued person in the beginning, it really pays off. So great job with that. You talk about it too, that you build a tribal community. Tell us about that, because that's interesting.
Well, Bob, one of my core values is tribal. And that's just a reflection of, I grew up in sports. I was in the military, and it seems like, again, when I was in the military, I worked on a cable crew. We dug holes and we pulled cable for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I wasn't out there fighting anybody but myself and this goddamn cable. But I was a part of this tribe. I was a part of this team where nobody could quit. We probably didn't want to be out there every day, but we were going to be out there every day. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of the work that came out of that and the relationships that came out of that. And so ever since then, I've kind of been on a hunt for building tribes, building communities, being that, central figure who can help those other people to come together. And then, of course, you already know I own a CrossFit gym. If there's one thing that we do great in CrossFit, besides making people look great naked and do amazing things, it's bringing people together as a tribe. You know, Bob, there's probably somewhere between 5 and 10 babies or children now that are walking around because their parents met at our community. And that's something that makes me more proud than any amount of money or any amount of weight loss or any amount of anything else that came out of that. And so when I talk about building tribe and community, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. I mean, that's what we need in our communities, in our cultures these days, is more of that, right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's nice to go to those, if you will, think of the cliche saying, go to the place where everyone knows your name.
Yeah.
It's got a good feeling. I mean, that's a nice place to go. You enjoy going there. You enjoy being part of it. It does make a big difference. So one of the other things that you talk about are values. If you can fill us in on some of that, because I think that's a good basis for anybody, especially with the way things are. We need good values in anything we do. That helps us be solid in who we are. Can you tell us about how you help people to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've been listening, I've already kind of alluded or even overtly, explicitly said core values in this conversation. And, the most important thing to realize when you talk about core values or even core tenets, and there is a difference, which we
Right.
don't need to go through right now, but is this probably isn't who you wish you were. It's probably not who you hope to one day be. Your core values are what make you you now. It's the ember that burns inside of you, kind of whether or not you choose to define it. And so, like all plans are never are the only thing you know about any plan is that it's not 100% true. Well, the
Yeah.
same thing is with core values. We're trying to identify and reveal what our core values are. So we're not making them up. And unfortunately, when I talk to entrepreneurs, almost without fail, and if they answer this question correctly, it's almost unlikely that I will ever need to work with them. But when I ask somebody about their core values, they go, "Oh yeah, we have a mission and we have core values." I go, "What are they?" Well, we made them when we filed for our LLC, and we put them in a digital drawer, somewhere, whether it's their Google Drive or whatever. And I could go look them up, and I can have them to you by this afternoon. And I just am so disappointed when I hear that, because I think entrepreneurs have been lulled into this sense because we say these cliche terms like core values and mission around and why. They've been lulled into this sense that those actually aren't important, that there's something you need, but that they're not important. And so my answer is, if you wouldn't get your core values tattooed on your body, again, figuratively, I'm not saying everybody has to, then they're probably not real. When I had core values when we launched our business many years ago, and I too put them in a drawer, and I couldn't tell you what they were. They were probably borrowed from Apple and McDonald's and United Airlines, right?
Yeah.
But when I went through the very almost painful process of filtering down through many steps to
Yeah.
getting to my core values, all of a sudden, Bob, I had this 5-piece puzzle that I could hold up to the world. And by hold up to the world, what I mean is I could look at employees or clients that I had in the past that should have been great, and it never seemed to work out. And I could say, oh, well, they were Spirit of the Puppy, so I loved being around them, but they had no military mindset, so I couldn't respect them. Or, in the future, as we look at to do another project, they say, well, this is great. This fits this and this, but because it doesn't fit this, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to part ways, or we're not going to go ahead forward with that decision. And so I will tell you right now that there has not been a day that has gone by since I did that work that my core values have not played an immense factor in the way that I behave as an entrepreneur and as a man.
Well, and that's a great thing too, because so many times our society, I think, is afraid to say no. They want to people please. They want to do whatever. You can say no to people because they're outside of your values. That's not a problem. And you just, you mention it, and that's that discipline stepping in, I think, that says it's okay to say no because these are outside what I want to be.
Yeah, I have what I call high beams of hope. And as an entrepreneur, I think this is common. And that is whenever I meet somebody new who's great, who feels like a good fit, my high beams of hope usually just blow them out. And I see the best version possible of themselves. Again, I'm a CrossFit guy. So part of being a CrossFit coach is I need to convince you, I need to be able to teach you how to do something that you used to think was impossible. Right. And so I have to see the best version of you. But that can be detrimental, not just for me, but for you.
Yeah.
And so, yes, more and more, there are wonderful people who I love that I would have to my home for dinner and Thanksgiving events or something like that I just absolutely would not work with. There are people that are, on my very short list of all stars over here that just they're not a core value fit for us to actually work together, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to have that difference. That's what makes up the world. So, makes our world so interesting. So
yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah. It's interesting because it seems like you teach an and not or type principles, that you own a business and you can be successful. Family guy and still be fit. It's not one or the other. Tell us about that.
That's accurate. I mean, listen, Spear and Clover is that way for a reason.
Mhm.
The story being that I was rucking one day in the dunes. I live here in the Indiana Dunes National Park,
Okay.
and I go about weekly. I'll go on what I call a solo mission, which is me and my 2 Australian Shepherd dogs will just go for a ruck, and I just get to think about what's going on in life, in business, myself, my place in the universe, whatever. And one day, I had a 40-pound pack on my back and I had a 40-pound log on my shoulder, and we're doing 11 miles. So I'm hoofing. We're going hard. And the dogs are like running out into the woods and they're playing around, and then they come back and they check on me. Then they're running out into the woods. They're getting all muddy and they come back and they're checking on me. And it just occurred to me that besides core values, in that instant, I realized that that's where I do my best, is not when I'm only focused on work and not when I'm only focused on play, but when I'm doing a combination of the both, where I'm focused on my goals, but I'm also taking time to develop new relationships, try new things, participate in hobbies, and enjoy my life. And so, absolutely, I have gone to great lengths to engineer. I have an engineered schedule for my week, and
Yeah,
it's exactly what I'm willing to do to be perfectly happy.
right. And again, it leads back to the discipline, the focus. It's okay to say no. We have this for our life for a purpose. If we want to go through that goal, we've got to be able to have that drive within us. And I think you amplify that, exemplify that with who you explain you are. I mean, there's a goal, there's a fire inside of you, and you're going to do what you need to do. And that may mean, like you said, spending time with your wife, your daughter, your work, and then take time for yourself.
Well,
So,
and Bob, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm sorry, you got me really excited there
oh,
because you talk about energy, you talk about passion and drive. I don't need to try to do that. If
right.
I was working, I had a job at a bank and it was painstaking for me to get through things that I was pretty good at and very interested in. But
Yeah.
what I found is, especially with this entrepreneur's disease, ADD, I've become a shepherd of my attention span, which means I put
Wow.
myself in positions where the thing that I'm drawn to is actually the virtuous thing. I put myself in positions where the work that I get done is the work that I really want to do, the work that gives me energy. Bob, this phone call is going to give me energy. I'm going to leave this phone call jazzed for the rest of the day. And that's why I do this as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't, go out and cold call. That's why I
Yeah.
don't hand out flyers on the side of the road. That's why I don't join the local Chamber of Commerce and give speeches, because I'd much rather engage with other podcasters, and I could give you examples of that across the board. I
Right.
really try to do only that work as much as I can that gives me energy, not drains me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us because that's important too. I mean, that these type of things, yeah, getting to know people is exciting for me. We're people to begin with. So, just that relationship right there, it puts people together. And then what do they do? How do they get through this? Those types of learning skills are what gets, interesting to me because it's how people are, it's how they grow, it's how they get through those hurdles and how they overcome things. So, great job with that. And appreciate you sharing that with others too.
Of course, brother.
Your background with the fitness and so forth, and health, and you talk about hiking. Let's talk about the benefits of that in your mindset. I mean,
Yeah.
if you will, inform people how those two relate.
Okay, so let's just take fitness and rucking and hot yoga and CrossFit and jujitsu and cycling or running, and let's just call that collective elective suffering or elective collective
Elective
suffering.
suffering.
This is another thing that I talk about. I actually have and this isn't like a plug or anything because it's not, but I have a 30-day Spear and Clover challenge, and two of the things you do are solo missions where you go out on your own and elective collective suffering. And the elective collective suffering part is you go and do something in a group of like-minded individuals that's crazy hard, and that could be CrossFit, that could be jujitsu, it could be hot yoga, it could be running or cycling, anything. It could be hiking
Mhm.
with other people.
Right.
But the idea is that that's where tribal like bonds are formed. That we call
Right.
my friend Robin Lalonde is the one that gave me the elective collective suffering thing. She's a world class running coach and a great gym owner as well from Chicago. And she talks about the sweat bonds that are created when you come together and you do something really hard. And then more importantly, if you think about like the continuum of your day to day life, from really really good over here to really really bad over here, when every single day or 3 or 4 times a week you go and you do something that makes you want to die for 35 minutes to an hour, all of a sudden those things that used to be at the very end of your pain scale are somewhere near the middle and just so much easier to deal with, right?
Right. And you being in the military, I mean, there was times I'm sure that you were literally sweating, almost dying, doing stuff you didn't want to do, but that collective group together that builds that bond. I know my dad was a U.S. Army veteran as well. He served in World War II. My brother was as well. He served in the 80s, and there's a bond there, and
Yeah.
it is something to see. And it's interesting you mention that because I think those that suffer or sweat together, there is a strong bond that is built amongst that relationship.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, whether it's we're digging a hole in the desert or swinging kettlebells next to each other, there is this thing where I'm just not gonna put the shovel or the kettlebell down if you don't, and you're
right.
over there thinking the same thing, and all of a sudden we're just so much. I hate the word synergy, but there is a synergy. We're greater than the sum of our parts
Yeah,
because we're holding each other accountable, and I. People, I think sometimes people falsely attribute some like inner drive to me. And the truth is, I get to do the things I'm passionate about, and I won't let you down. I would let myself down 5 times before I would ever, 100 times before I would ever let somebody else down. And so that's why I make sure to have constituents, to have people that I serve as much as I can, because that's how I show up as my best self.
and that's a great reminder for me and for anybody listening. I mean, you think about that. Don't let those people down. And yeah, you'll drive, hours. You'll drive yourself. Work hard, and you'll get it done. And then you might want to get lazy on Saturday or whatever. So, a great reminder for people, if we can turn that around and keep it to ourselves as well. Reminder that this life is worth living. This life is worth being healthy for. This life is worth seeing your kids grow up and seeing the benefits of your health for what you do in your life and how it sustains you. They get to see that, and they start to practice that and start to see the benefits of it and see the discipline of it. So great reminder with that. It's wow. Thank you for that.
Of course, Bob, this is great.
Yeah. So how does we kind of touched on a little bit, I mean, the fitness and how that helps to keep a positive mindset. I mean, we can talk about the chemicals and the endorphins and all that helps, but what are some ways you see that benefiting the clients you served?
Well, I'd rather look at it from the other side, and that is the folks that I know that don't stay active, that don't use their bodies or their eat healthy and things like that. They're slower, they're more sluggish, they have less motivation, they feel bad. Listen,
Yeah.
man, I think I mentioned, I don't think we were recording yet, but my house has a sickness going through it right now.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty great because I'm talking to somebody like you, Bob. But my stomach hurts,
Yeah.
and it's harder to show up when your stomach hurts. It's
Yeah.
harder to show up when you're overweight or when you don't have energy. It's harder to show up when you have a headache
Yeah.
because you're not hydrated or whatever it might be. I think that we're figuring it out. And if you look at some of the most successful people, yes, financially, but also just in your life, the people that you respect, very few of them are going to be like, sedentary, overweight, no motivation, low energy, taking naps all day, that type of stuff. And I think more and more we're seeing that bear fruit as you see, the people that are at the forefront of our world are fitter and fitter.
Yeah.
And so, listen, man, you only get one body.
Yeah.
And none of it matters. If a healthy man can have 1,000 different dreams. This is like a Confucius thing. A sick man only has one, and that is to be well. And so fitness is a hedge against illness. Because if you're fit, you have to go back to being well before you can even be ill, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, definitely. And yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot to get a reminder. Go visit somebody in a hospital. I mean, wow, it's not the place you want to be. And if you can avoid that at all costs, I mean, I just got an email the other day from a doctor that I've been seeing, and reminder, you need an annual checkup. And it's like, last time I was in there, they said, why are you here? It's like, well, I thought I needed a checkup. Just want to make
Yeah.
sure everything's working right. It goes, if you feel fine, you don't need to be here. Works
No,
for
that's
me.
great.
I'll do my
Yeah.
workouts where else where I do, and I keep myself healthy with supplements and so forth. So, and mindset growth. But yeah, if I don't have to see a doctor, I'm okay with
I love
that.
it.
So,
I love that, man.
well, Jason, tell us where people can find out more about you, your website, and how can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob. First of all, before I do, if you're listening to this and you made it this far, like this episode and subscribe to Bob's podcast because he's putting a lot of hard work in over here, and I think he's doing really great work, and you're benefiting from that. So please give him a great review. As a podcaster, I know how much that can mean. For me, my podcast is called Spear and Clover. Feel free to do the same for me. If you've enjoyed this message, I would love to have you on our side of the aisle. Otherwise, I do help entrepreneurs to build foundations for their business that can help them get to the next level and impact the world at a bigger rate. And you can find me at www.spearandclover.com. My platform of choice is typically Instagram. I'm Spear and Clover on Instagram, as well as Jason Skeesick on Instagram. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and everything is just my name or Spear and Clover. So thanks again, Bob. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, Jason, thank you for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We really appreciate your time today and the information. And once again, thank you for service to our country. I really appreciate it.
Of course, brother. Thanks again.
Thank you.